You will hear a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to Section 1. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Good morning. This is Fairview Tourist Information. James speaking.
Oh, hi. I came across a leaflet about free activities in the area, and it mentioned that I should call this number for details. I'm planning to visit Fairview with my partner and our 2 kids for a short break starting on July the 18th, or maybe the 19th. And I'm looking for things we can do on the 20th.
Certainly. No problem. Let's begin with some events designed for children. The City Museum has something called Explorer Day on that date. There'll be different zones for hands-on learning and discovery throughout the museum.
That sounds fun. When does it begin?
The museum opens at 9:30, and the Explorer Day event runs from 10 until 1:30. The museum itself remains open until 6. They'll also be showing a short documentary several times that day. It focuses on how glass is made, and children will be able to try a simple version of the process themselves using safe materials. Last time, the film was about weaving, which kids really liked, and they're preparing a new one about woodworking for next month.
That sounds great. Are there any other events happening?
Do you enjoy live performances?
Oh, yes, we do.
Well, there are multiple free performances on the 20th, a couple in the morning. Most of them take place around midday, and then there are a few scheduled for the evening. The styles range from jazz and folk to African drumming.
The African drumming sounds exciting. What time is that?
It's scheduled at a few locations. First in the community hall at 12 noon, then at the art pavilion at 3, and finally, there's an extended session at 8 p.m. in the main square.
Sounds like something the whole family would enjoy.
Another option could be the annual cycling race along the river route.
Oh, really? I'd love to hear more about that.
The race kicks off from Milltown Pier, just south of Fairview, and continues all the way to Riverton Park. The best viewing point is usually Elmwood Bridge, though it tends to get pretty packed.
And who competes in the race?
It's mostly cycling clubs from around the region, and the competition's pretty tough. One of the local teams actually came first in the Eastern Counties Championship earlier this year, back in April. That was a first for any team from Fairview. As a result, they'll be representing the region in the upcoming national finals.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
I also read something online about Oakfield Nature Park. It's known for rare birds, isn't it?
Yes, all year round. The park has both woodland and wetlands, which makes it ideal for all kinds of species. If you've got binoculars, definitely bring them along. Right now, there are also a lot of wild plants in bloom, including some that are rarely seen in this part of the country, Q8. The soil there is quite unique, so they thrive.
My partner would be really interested in that.
There's also going to be a short presentation and photo show about wild herbs, followed by a guided walk to help you find and identify them.
Nice. Is there a spot for children to paddle or swim?
Yes, there's a shallow area in the stream that's been enclosed for safety, so it's suitable for kids. A trained lifeguard is always present when it's open. But swimming isn't allowed in the larger pond, as it's much deeper.
Okay, we'll definitely pack their swimsuits if we decide to go. How long is the drive from Fairview?
It's roughly 25 minutes by car, but parking is tricky. That's why most people prefer taking the local bus. It takes about the same amount of time and drops you right at the entrance.
Perfect. I'll go over these options with the family. Thanks a lot for all your help.
My pleasure.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.
Section 2. You will hear a talk given by a woman named Emily Dawson about recent developments in a town called Woodbury. First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Good evening and thank you for joining this town meeting. Our first speaker tonight is Emily Dawson, a representative of the Woodbury Town Planning Committee.
Thank you. I'll start with a quick summary of changes in Woodbury over the last few decades, then I'll ask for your input on recent proposals. As most of you know, Woodbury has transformed significantly in the past half-century. Let me point out some major areas of change. Half a century ago, public transport was far more extensive. Buses connected nearly every district in Woodbury and the nearby suburbs. Many residents relied on them daily. Today, that's no longer the case, as providers only run the most profitable routes. Although newer, more comfortable buses have been introduced, they haven't attracted more passengers. While ticket prices are often criticised, they're actually quite comparable to those of earlier decades when adjusted for inflation. Another key shift is the town's road layout. Some areas in the centre have been blocked off from car traffic, which has improved pedestrian safety. However, the most noticeable improvement has been the new bike lanes, designed to separate cyclists from motor vehicles. These cycle lanes are being used far more than anticipated, which has helped reduce congestion and pollution. Although there was hope for a bypass to ease central traffic, the government didn't approve it, but we're continuing to lobby for change. Shopping habits have also evolved. A generation ago, the town centre was bustling with shoppers. That's no longer the case. Several new parking lots have opened, and eateries have been added to attract people. Still, many prefer travelling to large retail parks in neighbouring towns that offer better-known brands. Our town mostly has independent businesses, which are valuable, but the lack of recognisable stores seems to deter some consumers. In terms of healthcare, we've seen a drop in the number of general practice clinics, although each now looks after a larger population. Sadly, our local hospitals shut down over a decade ago. So residents must now travel for emergency care. On a brighter note, access to dental services has improved, with more practices now available. Employment trends have shifted too. The education sector, thanks to new schools and training colleges, now employs more people than any other. Alongside this, service-based businesses like IT support and legal firms have grown significantly. Interestingly, the town's manufacturing industry has remained relatively stable, unlike in many other regions.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Now let me share a few plans currently underway for key facilities in the town. First, the parking situation at the train station has become a real concern, as many of you are aware. A proposal to build a multi-storey structure was turned down. Instead, adjacent land has been purchased, and this will allow for a larger car park at ground level. As for the town cinema, the Regal, it will be closing soon, but don't worry, it's relocating. A new venue is already being built just off Kings Lane, and this will house 3 smaller theatres instead of one big hall. Now, the indoor marketplace is something many of us enjoy, though it's been showing its age. Because of some structural issues, there were discussions about knocking it down. Thankfully, it will instead be closed temporarily for essential repairs and interior upgrades. It's expected to reopen in the early summer. Regarding the public library, it remains heavily used, especially by students and freelancers. Funding has recently been secured to keep it open longer on selected days. While there are plans to possibly expand the facility later on, nothing has been finalised yet. Finally, the nearby wildlife park is currently managed by the town. That will change soon, as responsibility will pass to a national conservation body. Importantly, there will still be full public access, just with new oversight.
Section 3. You will hear 2 students called Anna and David, who are studying graphic design, discussing a joint project to their course, which involves creating and illustrating a series of short travel guides for children. First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 26. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 26.
Hi, David. Sorry I kept you waiting.
No worries, Anna. We should probably check where we are with the project.
Yes, I've gone through the sketches you made for my travel guide, The Journey to the Mountains, and I think they look fantastic. They really match the mood I had in mind while I was writing.
I'm glad you think so. There are just a couple of things I'd like to adjust.
Tell me.
First, the picture of the old bridge. I like how it's surrounded by flowers and shrubs, but it feels a bit too still. It needs more movement.
True, there's nothing much happening in it. How about adding the main character, Mia, walking across it?
Yes, let's include Mia. And what about placing a heron, the one she meets later, standing at the edge of the water?
And maybe the heron pauses and looks at her as she walks past.
Perfect, I'll try that.
Next is the image of the musicians playing in the village square.
That's the one just outside the mountain path, right?
Yes, you originally wanted them watching a parade, but I thought it would make it too crowded. What do you think of how it looks now?
I like it. Could you add Mia somewhere without changing the rest?
Maybe she could be leaning against the fence on the right.
That works, but make her looking upset. She feels left out of the celebration.
That'll contrast nicely with the following page, where she's laughing at the dancers.
Exactly. And then the winter scene of children sliding in the forest. I'm not happy with it.
Because they're sliding on autumn leaves that have frozen over, right?
Yes, but it doesn't look convincing yet.
I see what you mean. I'll rework it.
Oh, and I like their colourful mittens. Maybe give each of them a woolen cap as well?
Sure, and the caps can have tassels flying behind them to show they're moving quickly.
Great, that covers the illustrations.
Before you hear the rest of the discussion, you have some time to look at questions 27 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 27 to 30.
So, the next step is to decide exactly what we need to put in the report that goes with the guides and how we'll divide the work.
Right. What about starting with a section on how we organise the whole project?
That's important. You've handled most of the planning so far. Could you draft something and then we'll review it together?
Okay, that's fine. And I could write something about how we came up with the concepts for our 2 guides.
I've already begun writing on that too. So why don't we both do our versions and then combine them?
Good idea. What about including our interpretation of the guides, like the idea of encouraging exploration and curiosity?
That's going to be part of a later class activity. Everyone will read each other's work and share their own interpretations in a group discussion.
Oh, I didn't know that. So it's not going in the report?
Number. But we should have a section about the illustrations since they're such an important part of the children's reading experience. You're more familiar with drawing, so maybe you should write that?
Honestly, I find it tricky to describe my own artwork. I'd rather you handle it.
All right, I'll take care of that.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 4. You will hear part of a lecture given to business students about a particular research method known as ethnography. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Today, I'm going to introduce you to a research approach called ethnography. This method investigates how human cultures operate. Initially, it was created for anthropology, but over time, it has also been applied in sociology and the study of communication. So, you may be wondering, what relevance does this have for business? In fact, many companies have realized that ethnography can reveal deeper insights into customers' potential needs, both present and future, and can also uncover their attitudes toward current products. Beyond that, it can help firms design products or services that truly match what people want. Let's examine a few business-related examples. One study was carried out for a firm producing kitchen tools. Researchers observed how cooks measured items such as sugar and flour using measuring cups. They noticed that because the cups had the scale printed inside, users had difficulty seeing the numbers clearly and often checked repeatedly. This led to the creation of a redesigned cup, which went on to be a top-selling item. In another project, researchers explored mobile phone use in Uganda. They discovered that people without personal phones could pay local business owners to make calls. Since calls were prepaid, these customers wanted to see exactly how long they had been speaking. As a result, the phone manufacturer developed models for global use that included this timing function. Ethnography has also been applied in technology companies. At one firm, system administrators were shadowed for several weeks. It became clear that a major part of their role involved discussing problems with colleagues. But there was no standardized way to share data from spreadsheets and similar sources. This inspired the design of special software to improve such exchanges. In another case, a team observed hospital nurses. This led to the conclusion that nurses required instant access to patient records in any area of the hospital. Consequently, a portable computer tablet was developed, allowing them to check records wherever they were working. Sometimes, research takes place even when the observers cannot be physically present. For example, in a project for an airline, travelers used their smartphones to log details during flights in order to record their feelings while traveling. So, what distinguishes this form of research from more traditional approaches? Let's go over the main principles of using ethnography in business. First, the researcher approaches the study without a prepared hypothesis to test, unlike other forms of research. Instead, they allow the participants themselves to reveal the insights. When it comes to selecting participants, the process is similar to conventional research. Selection might be based on factors such as age group, level of income, or ownership of a certain product. However, choosing the right people is essential. Alongside the set criteria, participants must be at ease discussing their own experiences and being observed as they carry out their usual activities. Interestingly, most researchers find that people open up quickly, perhaps because they are often in familiar environments like their home or workplace. The key feature of this method is that it relies on direct observation of the participants' behavior rather than only distributing a questionnaire. That said, talking to participants still happens. But here, the direction of the conversation is shaped by the participant, not the researcher. This reduces the risk of the researcher steering the discussion toward their own preconceived ideas. Once the fieldwork is over and the researcher has returned to their desk, the real workload begins. Around 70 to 80% of their time is devoted to analyzing the material rather than collecting it. This involves reviewing photographs, listening to recordings, transcribing them, and compiling extensive notes, sometimes running to hundreds of pages. To identify what matters, researchers avoid focusing only on unusual or dramatic findings. Instead, they search for recurring patterns in the information and interpret the underlying meaning. These findings can then be fed back into the design process, often leading to valuable innovations.
That is the end of section 4. You now have half a minute to check your answers.